No press release, no apology tour, no public fallout. Just 3 films quietly erased before they ever existed. Ryan Reynolds had a package deal at Paramount. 3 projects, one of them tied to a beloved legacy brand. And then, without fanfare, it was all gone. Hollywood did not announce a scandal. Hollywood did not accuse anyone of wrongdoing. Hollywood simply walked away. And that is the part people keep missing. This is not a story about box office numbers. It is not about artistic failure. And it is not about cancel culture. This is a story about trust. Because in Hollywood, you can survive being difficult. You can survive being arrogant. You can even survive being disliked. What you cannot survive is becoming a risk no one wants to manage. Studios do not panic in public. They panic in private boardrooms, behind closed doors where no one is recording. And when they decide someone is no longer safe, they do not argue. They do not explain. They simply stop returning calls. So the real question is not why Paramount canceled 3 Ryan Reynolds films. The real question is this: what did Hollywood see that made it decide this was not worth the risk anymore? Hollywood likes to pretend it is emotional. It sells stories about passion, vision, and creative dreams. But behind the scenes, Hollywood is not emotional at all. It is mathematical. Every major studio decision begins with the same silence question: is this safe? Not safe in a moral sense, not safe in a political sense, safe in the only way Hollywood understands: financially, legally, reputationally. This is why people misunderstand decisions like Paramount's. They assume something personal must have happened. They assume someone was offended, insulted, or betrayed. That assumption is wrong. In Hollywood, almost nothing is personal. It is always about exposure to risk. Studios work on first-look deals and package agreements. These are not promises. They are options. They exist so a studio can walk away the moment the numbers stop making sense or the moment the variables become unstable. And Ryan Reynolds did not lose 1 project. He lost 3 before a single camera rolled. That timing matters, because canceling a film after release is damage control. Canceling a film before production is prevention. It means someone looked at the full picture and said, "We do not need to wait for proof. We already see the risk." Hollywood has always tolerated difficult personalities. It has tolerated egos, tantrums, and chaos. It has even tolerated people everyone privately dislikes. What it does not tolerate are situations that could spiral beyond control. And when a studio decides the risk is no longer predictable, the decision is already made. No announcement is required. No explanation is owed. They simply step back. And when that happens, it is never about one movie. It is about whether you are still considered safe to build around. Ryan Reynolds is often described as an actor. That description is convenient, but it is not entirely accurate. Ryan Reynolds is a brand. For years, his real product has not been range or transformation. It has been familiarity. The fast talk, the self-aware humor, the charming guy who never takes himself too seriously. Deadpool did not just revive Ryan Reynolds' career, it locked it into a very specific shape. From that moment on, audiences did not buy tickets to see a character, they bought tickets to see Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds. That worked for a while. But Hollywood has a long memory, and before Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds' career was inconsistent at best. When he stepped outside the joke, the results were uneven. Serious roles struggled, artistic projects underperformed, remakes raised eyebrows, studios noticed. Deadpool became both his shield and his cage. As long as he wore the suit, the numbers made sense. The moment he tried to step beyond it, the certainty disappeared. This is where the danger begins, Because when an actor is a brand, any damage to the brand affects every project attached to it. Executives do not ask whether Ryan Reynolds is talented. They ask something far simpler. Can he still sell tickets without the red suit and the safety net? And more importantly, is he now bringing complications that outweigh the upside? A brand does not need to collapse to become unstable. It only needs to crack. And once that happens, every new project becomes a question mark. Hollywood does not bet big on question marks. It quietly removes them from the equation. At a certain point in Hollywood, an actor stops being just an actor. They become a package. This is where Ryan Reynolds' situation changes completely. In theory, studios hire individuals. In reality, they inherit ecosystems. When Hollywood looks at Ryan Reynolds now, it no longer sees one name on a call sheet. It sees a combined presence. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, publicly inseparable, professionally intertwined. This matters more than people realize, because filmmaking is built on quiet cooperation, private conversations, off-the-record trust. A package deal complicates all of that. Suddenly, every disagreement has witnesses. Every conflict has a narrative. Every closed-door meeting carries the risk of becoming a story later. Hollywood does not fear strong personalities. It fears situations it cannot contain. And this is where the comparisons begin to surface. Not because the people involved are the same, but because the pattern feels familiar. The concern is not what happens in the room. The concern is what might be said after. When trust erodes, collaboration slows. When collaboration slows, projects stall. And when projects stall, studios look for exits. This is why executives do not ask whether Ryan Reynolds is likable. They ask whether doing business with him now requires managing too many moving parts, too many relationships, too many loyalties, too many potential consequences. Hollywood works with bullies. It works with egos. It even works with reputations everyone whispers about. What it does not work with is unpredictability tied to power. Once someone becomes a package deal, they stop being a creative asset and start being a risk profile. And when that happens, distance becomes the safest response. Every story like this has a moment where everything changes. Not loudly, not publicly, but permanently. For Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, that moment centers on Justin Baldoni. On paper, it looks like a private dispute, a disagreement, a legal conflict that could be resolved in court. Hollywood does not see it that way. Hollywood does not focus on who is right. It focuses on what the situation reveals. And what this situation revealed made people deeply uncomfortable. The meeting that followed was not seen as a conversation. It was seen as pressure. Multiple powerful figures in one room, a confrontation framed as clarification, and the presence of someone who, by many accounts, did not fully understand why they were there. Taylor Swift's involvement mattered more than people think, not because of her fame, but because of what it symbolized. If someone with that level of power and goodwill can be pulled into a situation like this, then anyone can. Hollywood runs on discretion, on unspoken rules, on the understanding that private disagreements stay private. The moment that boundary appears crossed, trust does not crack, it collapses. Executives began asking quiet questions, not about Justin Baldoni, but about everyone else in the room. If this is how conflict is handled, what happens the next time there is a disagreement? What happens if the studio was on the other side? That is the fear Hollywood cannot ignore. Because lawsuits can be survived, that press can be managed. But a reputation for weaponizing influence turns collaboration into a liability. And once that perception takes hold, the damage spreads faster than any headline. Hollywood rarely announces when someone is falling out of favor. It does not issue statements. It does not hold press conferences. It simply creates distance. And nowhere is that distance more noticeable than in the silence surrounding Hugh Jackman. For years, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were inseparable in public. Jokes, appearances, a carefully maintained image of friendship and mutual support. Then suddenly, nothing. No shared appearances, no casual proximity, no public signals of closeness. In Hollywood, silence is never neutral. Hugh Jackman's brand has always been carefully protected. The reliable professional, the good guy, the safe investment. And at this stage in his career, he cannot afford ambiguity. Especially not when his own reputation has already absorbed recent scrutiny. Especially not when awards recognition and legacy are on the line. So the calculation becomes simple. Distance is not betrayal. Distance is survival. Hollywood does this quietly. People do not cut ties dramatically. They fade. They stop showing up. They stop being seen. They let absence speak for them. This is how the industry communicates risk without ever saying the word. When influential allies step back, others notice. And once the pattern becomes visible, it does not need explanation. It confirms what executives are already thinking. If even close friends are creating space, then something has shifted. And when Hollywood senses a shift, it adjusts accordingly. Not with confrontation, but with quiet alignment. This is where the story comes into focus. Paramount did not punish Ryan Reynolds. It did not take a moral stand. It did not make an example of anyone. It made a calculation. Film studios are not emotional institutions. They are committees. Every major project passes through layers of approval. Producers, executives, legal teams, risk managers. And every one of them asks a version of the same question. If something goes wrong, who absorbs the damage? When Paramount looked at these projects, they did not just see scripts and budgets. They saw variables. They saw an actor whose brand was narrowing, a package deal that complicated negotiations, a legal dispute that had already drawn too much attention, and a growing sense that collaboration might no longer be discreet. That is not a scandal. That is a risk profile. And risk profiles do not need proof to be acted on. They only need to cross a threshold. The moment someone in that room said, "We do not need this particular headache," the decision was already over. Studios do not ask whether they can survive one project failing. They ask whether they can justify taking the chance at all. And in this case, the answer was no. Not because Ryan Reynolds cannot make money, but because Paramount does not need him badly enough to manage everything that now comes with him. That is the quiet truth of Hollywood power. You are not removed because you are bad. You are removed because you are optional.